Anthropic just shipped Claude Opus 4.7, and I've been sitting with the release notes and the benchmarks for a few hours now, and I genuinely think this one deserves a proper breakdown, not just a quick scroll through a tweet thread. I've been keeping up with the Claude releases for a while, and you know how it goes with these things. Every time a new Opus comes out, part of me thinks, okay, at some point it's just Platius, right? And then it isn't. It just keeps getting meaningfully better. Not in that we improved performance by 0.2% way that nobody cares about. In actual, practical, I can feel this in my workflow ways. So let's actually get into it. Okay, so it's time for a quick bit of context before we dive into the good stuff. The Opus line is Anthropic's top tier. It's the most powerful, most capable, most thorough version of Claude. Under it, you get Sonnet for regular tasks and Haiku when you need something fast and very cheap. Opus is what you need for when the work is genuinely hard. Opus 4.7 came out in February of this year, and it was already a pretty serious model. Then, in March, things got a little interesting. Drafts of an Anthropic blog post leaked and people started talking about something called Claude Mythos. Turns out that's a real model and it's Anthropic's most powerful thing ever built, but it's not available to the public. It's been previewed by a handful of companies for cybersecurity research under a program called Project Glasswing. So Opus 4.7 is what you actually get. It's below Mythos in an internal hierarchy, but it's the most powerful model of any of us can actually use right now. And given where Mythos apparently sits, that bar is higher than it sounds. So let's start with the coding, because honestly that's where most people's attention is going to go first, and the numbers here are worth talking about slowly. On SWE-bench Pro, which is a benchmark that tests agentic software engineering on actual real-world tasks, Opus 4.7 scores 64.3%. Opus 4.6 was 53.4%. That's nearly 11 points in one release cycle. For comparison, GPT-5.4 is at 57.7% and Gemini 3.1 Pro is at 54.2%. Opus 4.7 beats both of them on that benchmark. SWE-bench Verified tells a similar story. Opus 4.7 at 87.6%, Opus 4.6 at 80.8%. Now, I know benchmarks can feel detached from reality, so let's look at what developers are actually reporting. Cursor ran their own internal cursor bench at Opus 4.7, cleared it at 70% of tasks. Opus 4.6 cleared 58%. The people at Rakuten said that the new model resolves 3 times more production tasks than its predecessor. 3 times, and that's not a rounding error, definitely. What I personally find most interesting, though, is this self-correction behavior. Opus 4.7 catches its own logical mistakes during the planning stage, before it even starts executing. It doesn't just write the code and hope for the best. It pauses, it checks its own reasoning, and then it proceeds. That is the difference between a tool you have to review constantly and the one you can actually hand things off with some confidence. Now, if that sounds impressive, we have to talk about vision, because it's 3 times better without any exaggeration, and this one surprised me, honestly. I knew there'd be vision improvements, but I wasn't expecting the gap to be this wide. Opus 4.7 can now process images up to 2,575 pixels on the long edge, which works out roughly 3.75 megapixels. That's more than 3 times the resolution previous Claude models could handle. The downstream effects are real. Computer use agents that rely on reading detailed screenshots can now do it reliably. Extracting data from complex technical diagrams actually works. And for anyone building interfaces, creating slides, and working on anything visual, the quality of the outputs is noticeably better. A life sciences company called Solve Intelligence said that they're seeing huge improvements in reading chemical structures and interpreting technical diagrams. That kind of fine visual detail work was genuinely unreliable before this. XBOW does autonomous penetration testing, and their visual acuity benchmark is one I hadn't seen before, but the numbers are wild. Opus 4.7 scored 98.5%, whereas Opus 4.6 scored 54.5% on the same test. That is not an environment. That's basically a different capability level entirely. But the Agentic AI is where I keep coming back to. Agentic AI is where I think everything interesting is happening right now. Not chatting with a model, not asking it questions, running actual multi-step tasks over hours without babysitting it the whole time. Opus 4.7 is a real step forward here. Notion's AI team say that it is the first model to pass their implicit need tests, which are designed to catch situations where the model stops working because of tool failures. Opus 4.7 pushes through those. The CEO of Devon, which is an autonomous AI software engineering product, said that the model works coherently for hours and pushes through hard problems instead of giving up. That is exactly the behavior you want. New developer tooling is shipping with the release too. There's a new effort level called X-High, sitting between high and max, which gives finer control over reasoning depth versus response speed. Task budgets are also launching in public beta, letting developers guide how Claude uses tokens across longer runs. For production workflows where costs matter, that kind of visibility is actually really useful. Inside Claude Code, there's also a new /command called /ultrareview. It runs a dedicated code review session and looks for kinds of bugs and design issues a careful human reviewer would flag. Pro and Max users get 3 free sessions to try it. I think that feature is genuinely going to save people a lot of time. Now, this section might sound underwhelming at first, but stick with me. Opus 4.7 is substantially better at following instructions, meaning it does the actual thing you ask, not a slightly different thing it thought you probably meant. Prior models, including 4.6, had a habit of interpreting instructions loosely, skipping parts, making judgment calls that weren't theirs to make. Opus 4.7 is much more literal. You ask for something specific, and you get something specific. Here's the funny thing though, Anthropic themselves warn in the release notes that prompts written for older models might behave unexpectedly with 4.7 because those prompts might have been written sloppily with the assumption that the model would be forgiving. Now it isn't. You'll need to tighten up your prompt, and honestly, I see that as a progress. Now, there are a few other things worth mentioning because they're legitimately useful improvements. Memory first. Opus 4.7 is better at file system-based memory, meaning it actually holds onto important context across long multi-session projects and uses it to move forward without needing you to re-explain everything every single time. For anyone doing serious work over multiple days, that's a noticeable quality of life improvement. On professional knowledge work, Opus 4.7 is scoring state-of-the-art on GDP Vol AA, a third-party evaluation covering finance, legal, and other professional domains. Databricks reported 21% fewer errors compared to Opus 4.6. There's a cyber verification program for security professionals who have a legitimate reason to use the model for things like penetration testing or vulnerability research. On the broader safety side, Opus 4.7 is modestly better than 4.6 on honesty and resistance to prompt injection attacks. Anthropic's own assessment calls it largely well-aligned and trustworthy, though not fully ideal. I actually respect that they say that. It would be easy to just declare it perfect and just move on, but then again, Anthropic isn't Elon Musk. Pricing is the same as Opus 4.6, $5 per million input tokens, $25 per million output, with up to 90% savings through prompt catching. No increase, and that is good news. Now I'm gonna be real with you. I went into looking at the release expecting a solid incremental update, maybe some nice numbers, nothing too dramatic. That's not what this is. The gap between 4.7 and 4.6 is bigger than I expected, and the breadth of it across coding, vision, agents, instructions following, and knowledge work makes it feel like a genuinely meaningful jump. The competitive picture is interesting too. GPT-5.4 is real, Gemini 3.1 Pro is real, and neither of them is phoning it in. But on the benchmarks that matter most for the way people are actually using these models professionally, particularly coding and agentic workflows, Opus 4.7 is leading, not by a mile or on anything, but it's clearly out in front of the things that matter most. And then there's the Mythos situation sitting quietly in the background. Anthropic has a more powerful model that they're not shipping yet because they think it needs more careful handling first. That's actually kind kinda wild to sit with. The best publicly available model right now is not their best model. I don't know what that means for 6 months from now, but it means something. For today though, Opus 4.7 is what I'd use for anything serious. It's live right now across Claude AI, the API, Amazon Bedrock, Google Cloud Vertex AI, and Microsoft Foundry. If you're waiting for a reason to try it, this is as good of a reason as any.